Hello, dreamer, and welcome to SleepytimePod. I'm Abigail, and tonight I'll be your guide on a journey beyond time itself. Let's take a deep breath, let go of the day, and drift into a world of ancient gods, forbidden fates, and the courage to defy destiny. Tonight's tale is one of love, loss, and rebellion. The story of a goddess who dared to challenge the very fabric of time. Eos, the goddess of the dawn, was never meant to change the course of fate. But when she glimpsed a future she could not accept, she made a choice, one that would set the heavens ablaze and reshape the world forever. So settle in, close your eyes, and let the whispers of the past carry you into a realm where time is not a prison, but a force waiting to be rewritten. This is the goddess who conquered time. The sky blushed gold as the first light of dawn kissed the horizon, painting the heavens with delicate streaks of amber and rose. In the ethereal glow of morning, Eos stood at the edge of her celestial domain, watching as the mortal world stirred beneath her gaze. She had done this for millennia, guiding the break of day, ushering the world from darkness into light. And yet, this morning was different. A weight pressed upon her chest, heavier than the chariot she drove across the sky each day. Today, she was not merely the goddess of dawn. She was a woman cursed, a lover condemned to bear witness to a cruel twist of fate. Behind her, on a bed of soft clouds, Tithonus lay sleeping, or what could be called sleep. His body was frail, his skin drawn tight over brittle bones. Once he had been the most beautiful of mortals, a prince who had captured the heart of a goddess. She had loved him with a fervor the gods had warned her against, and in her desperation to keep him, she had begged Zeus for the one thing mortals lacked: immortality. But Zeus had not given him eternal youth. Now Tithonus lived on, a prisoner in his own decaying body, forever aging but never dying. His once strong hands, which had caressed her face with such tenderness, now trembled, unable to even lift themselves. His once clear voice, which had whispered words of love in the golden halls of the dawn, had faded into a feeble rasp. And Eos, forever untouched by time, could only watch. She knelt beside him, brushing strands of silver hair from his forehead. His eyes fluttered open, cloudy and distant. For a brief moment, recognition flickered there, and he managed to croak her name: Eos. Her heart shattered. How long would this continue? How many more years would she watch him wither, trapped in the eternity she had so selfishly wished for him? She had not meant for this. She had not understood. The gods had cursed her for her arrogance, and worse still, they had cursed him. It had to end. She rose to her feet, turning her gaze toward the heavens. She had heard whispers of an ancient power that predated even Olympus, a power hidden deep in the fabric of fate itself, the threads of Enki, strands of destiny woven before even the gods were born. If she could find them, perhaps she could undo this mistake. Perhaps she could give Tithonus back what the gods had stolen from him. But it would not be easy. The Moirai, the three fates, did not yield their threads lightly. And Olympus would never allow her to challenge the order of fate. Still, she had no choice. A soft voice spoke behind her, Eos. She turned. Standing in the entrance of her golden palace was Selene, goddess of the moon. Her silver robes shimmered like starlight, and her dark eyes held quiet understanding. "You are thinking of leaving," Selene said softly. Eos swallowed hard. "I have to." The moon goddess studied her, then sighed. "Then at least take caution. If the fates learn of this, then let them try to stop me." And with that, the goddess of dawn stepped forward, into the unknown, into the darkness beyond Olympus, into a journey that would change the heavens forever. The sky still bore the first hues of dawn as Eos descended from her celestial palace, stepping away from the realm of light and into the unknown. The golden clouds beneath her feet dissipated as she moved forward, each step carrying her farther from the world she had always known. The air grew heavy, the glow of Olympus dimming behind her. For the first time in an eternity, she was walking a path that the gods had forbidden. She did not hesitate. Teutonis's frail face burned in her mind, the tremor of his once strong hand still haunting her touch. The gods had cursed her love, twisted it into something cruel, but they had not taken away her resolve. She would find the threads of Ananke, the ancient fibers of destiny itself. If there was a way to sever Tithonus from the curse of eternal decay, she would grasp it, no matter the cost. The first step in her journey lay beyond the reach of Olympus, in the shadows cast by the gods themselves. She had to seek the Oracle of the Forsaken, a being long thought to be lost to time, hidden in the Valley of Echoes where the voices of the past never ceased. A whisper of moonlight trailed behind her. "You cannot walk this path alone." Eos turned to find Selene, her sister, watching her from the boundary where night met morning. The goddess of the moon had always been her counterpart, ever distant but ever knowing. Unlike the others, Selene had not tried to stop her. Instead, there was only quiet understanding in her eyes. "I do not expect to return," Eos admitted, "not until I have undone what should never have been." Selene's gaze flickered to the sky above them, where the last stars of night still lingered. "The Moirai will not let you tamper with fate without consequence. The gods will send their hunters. You must be prepared." Eos clenched her fists, then let them try. Without another word, she stepped beyond the reach of Olympus into the realm where forgotten things waited. The Valley of Echoes stretched before her like a wound in the earth. It was a place untouched by time, where voices whispered ceaselessly through the wind, carrying the words of those who had been lost to the past. The moment Eos set foot within its borders, the air hummed with energy. She comes, the cursed goddess, seeking what should never be found. The voices of forgotten spirits drifted around her, each syllable laced with warning. She did not falter, She pushed forward through the twisting path of the valley, past jagged rocks and mist that seemed to coil like living things. The oracle awaited her deep within. She reached the threshold of an ancient temple, its entrance marked by crumbling pillars. Shadows stirred beyond the archway, and the air grew colder. Eos stepped forward, and with that single motion, the world around her 5e shifted. Darkness fell. She was no longer in the valley. She stood instead in a vast chamber, its ceiling lost to shadow, its floor nothing but swirling mist. A single figure waited at the center, a woman shrouded in black, her face hidden beneath a silver veil, the Oracle of the Forsaken. "You dare enter my domain, Dawn Bringer?" The oracle's voice was neither kind nor cruel. It was merely lie-knowing. Eos did not lower her gaze. "I seek the threads of Ananke." A pause, then a soft, amused hum. "Fate is not a thing to be plucked like a flower, child of the morning. It is woven unbreakable. You wish to defy what has already been written." Eos's heart pounded. "If I must." The oracle tilted her head, considering. "You are not the first to seek to undo fate. But do you understand the price? The gods do not fear change. They fear chaos. If you pull at the thread of destiny, it will not simply unravel for one. It will unravel for all." Eos tightened her grip at her sides. "Then tell me where to find them." Silence stretched between them. The mist coiled, and for a moment, the oracle said nothing. Then, with a slow movement, she lifted her hand. The mist parted, revealing something beyond mortal sight. Eos gasped. The threads of Ananke were not hidden in Olympus. They were not buried in the depths of the world. They were woven into the very fabric of the stars. And to claim them, she would have to ascend beyond the reach of the gods themselves. The oracle's voice echoed through the chamber. "Your path will take you where no god has dared to tread, but you are not alone, Dawn Bringer. A shadow follows you. A hunter already walks in your wake." Eos's breath caught. "Who?" The oracle turned away. "The gods will not allow you to rewrite fate, and so they have sent the one who walks between the living and the dead. Thanatos, the god of death, hunts you now." The chamber shattered around her. The vision was gone. The temple was gone. Eos stood once more in the Valley of Echoes, her heart hammering in her chest. She had the answer she sought, but now the real danger had begun. She was being hunted, and death itself was on her trail. A wind stirred the valley, carrying with it the scent of decay and something older than time. The sky darkened, the shadows lengthening. Eos knew that she could not linger. Every moment she stood still was a moment closer to her doom. She turned, her resolve steeled. The next step of her journey would take her beyond the mortal realm and into the heavens themselves. But first, she had to evade Ekanatos, the harbinger of death. With one final glance at the ruined temple, she vanished into the mist, her path set toward the realm of the stars. Eos fled the Valley of Echoes, her heart pounding like the distant thunder of an approaching storm. The oracle's words echoed in her mind, repeating over and over like a curse. The gods will not allow you to rewrite fate, and so they have sent the one who walks between the living and the dead. Thanatos, the god of death, hunts you now. A shiver ran through her as she emerged from the valley's mist. The golden light of dawn had always been her ally, but now, even as the first rays touched the world, a creeping shadow followed her. A presence that was neither mortal nor god, yet something in between. Thanatos was near. She had no time to linger. The oracle had revealed the truth. The threads of Ananke, the ancient fibers of fate, were not hidden in the depths of the underworld or bound within the halls of Olympus. They were woven into the very fabric of the stars, where no god had dared to tread. If she was to reach them, she would have to leave behind the world she knew and ascend into the unknown. But first, she had to survive the hunt. The road ahead stretched into the wild lands, a place beyond the reach of Olympus, beyond the laws of gods and men. Here, forgotten temples crumbled beneath vines, and rivers whispered of things long lost to time. Eos moved swiftly, her golden sandals barely touching the earth as she raced toward her next destination, the celestial spire. The spire was an ancient remnant of the Titans, a bridge between the heavens and the mortal world, abandoned after the fall of Cronus. If there was a way to reach the threads, it would be through there, but she could not ascend it alone. A flicker of movement in the distance caught her eye. A figure clad in dark robes moved with impossible grace, his form shifting like mist, appearing and disappearing between the trees. Thanatos. She gritted her teeth and pushed forward. The god of death did not chase like a beast. He stalked with patience, knowing that time was always on his side, but Eos was not mortal. She would not wait for him to strike. She turned sharply into the dense forest, weaving through the thick underbrush. If she could not outrun him, she would have to outthink him. Running will not change your fate, Dawn Bringer. His voice was calm, unhurried like the whisper of wind through the trees. Eos did not respond. She focused on the terrain, her sharp eyes scanning for an opening. There, a break in the trees ahead where the ground sloped upward toward the ruins of an old shrine. If she could just... A sudden gust of wind slammed into her, knocking her off balance. She rolled, barely regaining her footing as Thanatos materialized in front of her, his dark eyes unreadable beneath the silver mask he wore. He carried no weapon. He did not need one. "Do you truly think you can escape me?" he asked, tilting his head slightly. "You know how this ends." Eos clenched her fists. "You may be the god of death, but I am the goddess of the dawn. I do not surrender to the night." A flicker of something passed through his gaze. Was it amusement? Pity? He took a step forward, and the shadows around him stretched, dark tendrils reaching toward her. "This is not a battle you can win." "No," she said, summoning the light of morning into her hands, "but it is one I will not lose." With a burst of radiant energy, she struck the ground, blinding him for a split second. It was all she needed. She turned and ran. The celestial spire loomed ahead, its towering form cutting into the sky like a jagged spear. Its surface was etched with forgotten sigils, remnants of the time before Olympus, when the Titans had ruled the heavens. Eos pressed a hand against the ancient stone, feeling the hum of power beneath her fingertips. This was a gateway, a passage to something beyond the reach of the gods. But she was not alone. Thanatos appeared at the base of the spire, watching her with unsettling calm. "You cannot outrun death, Eos. You know this." She turned to face him, breathing heavily. "And yet I have." For the first time, he hesitated. Eos lifted her chin. "The gods have sent you to stop me, but tell me, Thanatos, do you even know why? Do you know what they fear?" He was silent. "They fear change," she continued. "They fear that I will do what none of them dared, that I will break the chains of fate. But tell me this, why do you serve their will so blindly? Do you not also long for something more?" His expression did not change, but she saw the flicker of hesitation in his stance, the barest shift of uncertainty. For a brief moment he was silent, and in that silence she leaped onto the spire. The stone shuddered beneath her touch, ancient runes blazing to life. The air around her crackled, the veil between worlds beginning to tear. She could feel it, the pull of the stars, the vast expanse of fate itself waiting beyond the heavens. Thanatos lunged, but it was too late. A brilliant light erupted, consuming her vision. And then she was falling, not down, but up, into the unknown. Eos tumbled through the void, her body weightless, her golden hair streaming like a comet's tail behind her. The light of the celestial spire was gone, replaced by a vast and endless expanse of stars, each one burning with the silent power of the cosmos. The pull of gravity was meaningless here. She was adrift in a sea of eternity, unbound by Olympus, unshackled from the world below. For a moment, she simply existed. Then came voices. A whisper at first, a susurrus of forgotten tongues drifting through the ether. They called to her, overlapping, stretching through time and space, neither mortal nor divine, the voices of the Ar threads or Venankes. She comes, the dawn that defies. Will she weave or will she sever? Eos clenched her fists, her celestial light dimming as she fought against the weight of the words pressing into her mind. The threads of Venanki were more than mere strands of fate. They were conscious, woven into the very fabric of reality itself. If she was to claim them, she would have to withstand their judgment. With a steady breath, she willed herself forward, The currents of the void responded, shifting around her as though bending to her will. The darkness ahead parted, revealing what lay at the heart of destiny itself. The Illum Alanque. Suspended in the nothingness, the loom stretched beyond comprehension, its golden threads spanning the entirety of existence. It pulsed with an ancient rhythm, weaving the stories of gods and mortals alike. Every soul, every choice, every life was etched into its fabric, unchangeable, immutable. Unless someone dared to touch it. Eos reached out, her fingers trembling as she approached the first thread. It hummed beneath her touch, vibrating with the weight of all things. This was what she had sought. The power to unmake fate. A shadow fell over her. She turned sharply, her heart lurching as she met the cold, unyielding gaze of Atropos, the eldest of the Moirai, the cutter of threads. Cloaked in flowing darkness, her expression was unreadable, her silver shears gleaming against the starlit void. "You would dare." Atropos's voice was neither angered nor surprised. It was knowing. Eos squared her shoulders. "I have come for the threads of Enki. I will undo what the gods have cursed. I will rewrite what should never have been." Atropos studied her for a long moment, then reached out. The loom trembled at her touch, the golden strands quivering. "Foolish Dawn," she murmured, "you believe fate is cruel because it does not bend to your will. But fate does not serve your desires. It simply lightriders." Eos's jaw clenched. "Then why do the gods fear it?" Atropos did not answer. Instead, she lifted her shears and, with a single deliberate motion, cut a thread. The universe shuddered. Below them, unseen but awe-felt, something she vanished. A mortal life, erased, their fate undone. Eos gasped as the ripple spread outward, distorting reality. The power Atropos wielded was not just control. It was not just control. It was... And yet, the loom continued weaving. New strands formed where the old had been, threads twisting into a new design, a new fate born from the loss of the old. Eos's eyes widened. It repairs itself? Atropos tilted her head. Did you think fate was so easily destroyed? Cut a thread, and another takes its place. Change destiny, and the world will change with it. The question, Dawn, bringer, is whether you can accept what follows. A chill ran down Eos's spine. She had come seeking power, believing that fate was something she could control, something she could adjudicate. But standing before the loom, she understood. Fate was not fixed. Fate was alive. And if she touched it, she would not just change Tithonus's destiny. She would change everything. Atropos stepped aside, her gaze never leaving Eos. Take a thread. If you dare. But understand this, you will not be the same once you do. Eos hesitated. Her mind raced. The weight of what she was about to do pressed upon her. One choice, one act, one moment. Her hands trembled. Then slowly she reached for the loom, and the universe held its breath. Eos's fingers hovered over the golden threads, each one pulsing with the hum of destiny itself. The loom of Ananke stretched before her, vast and incomprehensible, its strands interwoven with the fates of gods and mortals alike. Time felt frozen as she stood at the precipice of an irreversible act. Behind her, Atropos remained still, the silver shears in her grasp glinting against the starlit void. The cutter of threads had spoken her warning. Fate was not something to be undone lightly. Eos drew a slow breath, her mind racing. The gods had deceived her, cursed Tithonus with eternal decay, condemning him to a fate worse than death. She had come this far to reclaim what was stolen, but now, at the very edge of power, she hesitated. If she reached for the thread that bound him to his suffering, what would unravel in its place? Would the world shift? Would she lose herself in the consequences? Her pulse quickened. She had not fought through death's grasp, defied the will of Olympus, and stared into the abyss of fate only to walk away. She would not walk away. Her hand tightened into a fist before she reached forward and grasped the shimmering thread connected to Tithonus's life. A jolt of energy surged through her, the loom trembling in response. The whispers grew louder, voices of countless destinies overlapping, screaming, pleading. This is not your place. You defy the balance. Will you bear the cost? Eos clenched her jaw. I will bear whatever I must. The moment her fingers wrapped fully around the thread, the universe shuddered. A blinding pulse of lights erupted from the loom, and the world fractured. She was no longer in the realm of the stars. The space around her collapsed inwards, spiraling in chaos before reforming into something new. A field of endless twilight stretched before her. The air carried the scent of old parchment and rain, soaked earth. The sky was neither day nor night, painted in hues of violet and gold. Time did not flow here. A presence stirred. Eos turned sharply as a figure emerged from the shifting mist. Not Atropos, not a god she recognized. A woman stood before her, clad in robes of celestial black, her face veiled in silver silk. Her eyes gleamed beneath the fabric, knowing unyieldings. You have touched the loom, the woman said, her voice resonating with ancient power. And now, the tapestry of fate unravels. Eos straightened, refusing to bow beneath the weight of this presence. Who are you? The woman stepped closer, shadows twisting around her. I am Minix, the night eternal, the first darkness before the first dawn. Eos's breath hitched. The mother of the fates, the primordial goddess who had existed before Olympus, before the Titans, Before all things, you stand on dangerous ground. Dawn, bringer. Nyx murmured, her gaze piercing. Do you understand what you have done? Eos's grip on the thread in her hand tightened. I have undone an injustice. Nyx tilted her head, a slow, measured movement. Have you? Look. The world around them shifted, rippling like disturbed water. Shadows peeled away, revealing glimpses of what had changed. In one vision, she saw a Tithonus, whole once more, his body restored to youth, laughter on his lips. He was no longer cursed to wither endlessly, but beside him, the image blurred, darkened. A city burned. A child's cry was swallowed by the roar of war. A king, once destined to lead his people to prosperity, now lay slain before he could ever rise. The thread she had pulled had not only altered Tithonus's fate, it had reshaped everything connected to it. Her heart clenched. No. Nyx's voice was calm, but there was no cruelty in it. Fate does not change in isolation. It shifts and twists, unraveling what was meant to be. Eos stumbled back. There must be a way to correct it, to save him without this destruction. Nyx watched her for a long moment. Then she lifted a single delicate hand and a second thread appeared, dark, gleaming, twisting like ink in water. There is always another choice, Nyx said, but will you take it, or will you face the gods' judgment for the chaos you have set in motion? The world around them shook. Eos knew she had little time. Her choice had led her here. Now she would have to make another. The weight of Nyx's words hung heavy in the twilight air, pressing against Eos like the vast emptiness of the cosmos itself. The dark, gleaming thread floated before her, twisting and writhing like a living thing, its inky tendrils pulsing with an energy both ancient and terrifying. There is always another choice, Nyx had said, but will you take it? Or will you face the gods' judgment for the chaos you have set in motion? Eos's breath came in slow, measured inhales, her pulse hammering in her ears. Her fingers trembled as she hovered between the golden thread she had just unraveled and the Corsican path. As Nyx now offered her. Her mistake had been made clear. She had thought she could alter fate in isolation, that she could undo what was done without consequence. But the tapestry of destiny was not a single thread. It was woven into the lives of countless others. What is this? Eos asked, her voice quieter than she intended. What does this second thread lead to? Nyx's expression did not change, but the air between them shifted, as though the very fabric of the void was listening. It is not for me to say, she murmured, only that fate demands balance. You have pulled upon its design. Now another thread must be woven in its place. Eos's grip tightened around the first thread, the golden strand she had stolen from the loom, the one that had freed Tithonus from his suffering, but had shattered the fates of Athanasso many others. She wanted to argue, to protest, to beg that there must be another way. But the universe did not bargain. Fate did not ask. And so, slowly, reluctantly, she reached forward and took hold of the dark thread. The world erupted. Eos was falling. Not through the cosmos, not through time, but through something deeper, something that had no name, something that had existed before even the gods themselves. The darkness coiled around her, whispering in voices she did not recognize, voices that were neither mortal nor divine. Then, Tia, city burning. Eos gasped as the vision slammed into her, her breath stolen by the force of it. Flames devoured marble walls, their golden glow illuminating the night. Shadows flickered through the smoke, people running, screaming, fighting against an unseen force. At the heart of the destruction stood a single figure. A man, cloaked in shadows, his face obscured, but his presence unmistakable. Power pulsed from him, dark and consuming, an energy that did not belong to any god she knew. Eos tried to step closer, but the vision shifted. Tia battlefield, littered with the dead. The earth was soaked in blood, the sky split by lightning. At the center of it all, the same shadowed figure stood atop a ruined throne, his hands lifted as the storm raged around him, and from his grasp, golden strands of fate dangled, torn from the loom itself, shimmering in the darkness. Eos staggered back. What is this? Who is he? Nyx's voice curled around her. This is the fate you have rewritten. The vision twisted again. Tia, temple, hidden beneath the earth. Faint light flickered against the stone walls, casting long, wavering shadows. At the center of the temple, bound by glowing chains, knelt a woman, her skin luminescent, her silver eyes unyielding despite her captivity. Eos's heart stopped. It was Athames, the titaness of divine order, the one who had once sat beside Zeus, who had spoken the laws of justice before Olympus had even been formed. She was imprisoned, and Eos knew, in the depths of her soul, she knew that this was the balance the universe had demanded. Teuthonus had been freed, but in his place, chaos had been given a vessel, and justice itself had been bound out. Eos ripped herself free from the vision with a gasp, staggering backward, her hands shaking. Nyx stood before her, unmoving. Do you see now? Eos swallowed, her throat dry. This isn't balance. This is destruction. Nyx tilted her head. Balance is not always what you wish it to be. You sought to undo one fate, and now another has risen in its place. Eos felt the weight of the dark thread pulsing in her grasp, its energy intertwining with her own. She had thought she was in control. She had thought she could defy the gods and win. But fate had never been hers to wield. And now, Athames was gone, imprisoned, and a new power had been unleashed upon the world. Eos clenched her fists, the golden light of dawn flaring around her. Then I will undo this. I will find Themis and restore what was lost. Nyx's expression did not change, but there was something almost imperceptible in her gaze. A flicker of a flicker of perhaps respect. Then your path is clear, Dawn. Bringer, she murmured. Find the one who carries fate in his grasp. Find the man who wields the stolen threads. Eos lifted her chin. And when I do? Nyx's lips curved into the barest hint of a smile. Then we shall see if you are truly strong enough to defy what was never meant to be. The darkness around them fractured. The cosmos shattered. And Eos fell back into the world, her mission clear. She had undone fate. Now she had to fix it. Eos crashed back into the world with the force of a dying star. The moment her feet touched solid ground, the weight of existence returned, heavy and suffocating. She gasped, stumbling forward as the sky above her spun in disarray, the aftershocks of fate still unraveling in the cosmos. The scent of damp earth and burning wood filled her lungs. She was no longer in the celestial void, no longer in the presence of Nyx. Instead, she stood upon the charred remains of a ruined temple. The temple of Themis. Her stomach clenched. The vision had not been a mere warning. It had been a truth already set in motion. The pillars of the once magnificent shrine lay in broken heaps, the carved images of scales and divine judgment shattered. The fire that had ravaged this sacred place had long since died, leaving only smoldering embers in its wake. She stepped forward, her golden light flickering in the ashes. Themis had been here. She had ruled from this place, offering divine wisdom and guidance. And now, she was gone. A gust of wind howled through the ruins, carrying whispers with it. Not the voices of gods, nor the whispers of fate, but something watching. Hans! Something watching. Eos turned sharply, her eyes narrowing as the air before her shimmered. The dust lifted, spiraling together into a form. Hooded and faceless emerged from the remnants of the temple. You have come too late. Dawn, bringer. The figure intoned, its voice neither male nor female, but something in between, as if many voices spoke in unison. She is gone. Eos took a step closer, her fists clenching at her sides. I know she has been taken. Tell me where. The figure did not move. The one who stole her walks, the path of shattered fate. He is no god, no titan, no mortal. He is something new, and he does not walk alone. Eos's breath hitched. The shadowed man from the vision, the one who stood atop the battlefield, tearing fate from the loom. He was real. He existed, Anawa. Where can I find him? She demanded. The figure tilted its head. You do not find the weaver of ruin. He finds you. The words sent a chill through her bones. But if you wish to seek him, the figure continued, begin where fate was first undone. Seek the forgotten city, where the gods do not tread, where the threads of destiny fray and snap. Eos's mind raced. Then that is where I will go, she said, steel in her voice. The hooded figure inclined its head, then began to dissolve into the wind, its final words lingering like an omen. Be warned, Dawn. Bringer, you are no longer an observer of fate. You are its rival, and rivals do not tread unchallenged. The journey to the forgotten city was not one taken lightly. No road led to it. No map could mark its presence. It existed on the fringes of reality, where time unraveled, where history repeated and devoured itself. Eos traveled across lands untouched by gods. She crossed deserts where the bones of lost titans lay buried beneath shifting sand sins. She climbed mountains so high their peaks scraped against the heavens, where even Zeus's storms dared not reach. Each step forward felt like trespassing into the unknown, a world that had been hidden away for reasons even she did not fully understand. Days bled into nights, and yet she did not tire. The power of dawn thrummed within her, pushing her onward. Then, at last, she saw it. The forgotten city. It stretched before her like a relic of a forgotten age. Stone towers leaned against the sky, their walls cracked and crumbling, but still standing. Bridges that had once connected grand halls now lay broken, their remnants hovering in the air, frozen in time. The entire city was suspended in a state of partial ruin, as if the moment of its fall had never truly ended. The air thrummed with something unnatural. This place was unmade, trapped between existence and oblivion. Eos stepped forward and the world shifted. The sky darkened, the horizon bending. The shadows that had once clung to the ruins moved. Then, a voice, low, calm, and waiting. So you have come. Eos spun, her golden light flaring to life. And there, standing upon the broken remains of a temple staircase, was a him. The Ewer of ruin. The man who had stolen fate itself. The golden chains pulsed, resonating with Eos's presence. The moment she stepped closer, the air around her thickened, pressing against her like an unseen force trying to halt her movements. Themis remained motionless, her silver gaze locked within the prison of celestial light, but Eos could feel her awareness beneath the layers of containment. She is awake, Eos murmured, reaching out toward the shimmering threads that held the Titaness captive. The weaver of ruin stood beside her, his expression unreadable. Of course, she is. Themis has never been truly asleep. Her silence is forced, not chosen. Eos clenched her fists. Then we free her. She lifted her hand, summoning the power of the dawn, the light that split the heavens and heralded new beginnings. Golden fire coiled around her fingertips, crackling with divine energy as she prepared to attain energy, The chains binding them, miss. Eos, wait. The weaver's voice cut through the charged air. Eos turned sharply, impatience flickering in her eyes. You would stop me? After bringing me here? His gaze darkened. I would not stop you. But if you do this now, you must be prepared for what follows. Themis's freedom is not a simple matter of breaking chains. She has been bound for a reason, one the gods will not ignore. Eos hesitated, the weight of his words settling in her chest. She knew the gods well enough to understand they never gave up their power willingly. If I do not free her, then all of this has been for nothing, she said, voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. You told me. The gods fear her judgment. I say it's time they faced it. The weaver studied her, then nodded once. Then strike true. Dawn, bring her, and be ready to stand against Olympus itself. Eos turned back to Themis. The air crackled with expectation, the golden chains tightening, sensing their end. She struck. The moment her fire met the bindings, the world shattered. The chains screamed as they unraveled, the celestial energy within them bursting outward in a shockwave that sent Eos stumbling back. The entire chamber shook, as if Olympus itself had felt the breach of its sacred prison. The light that had caged Themis fractured, breaking apart into countless shards that vanished into the ether. And then the Titaness fell. Eos lunged forward, catching her before she could collapse to the ground. Themis was weak, her once radiant form dimmed from centuries of imprisonment, but as Eos met her gaze, she saw withering eyes submission, no fear, only the steady, unshaken resolve of divine law itself. Eos. Themis's voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. You have done what even the fates feared. Eos tightened her grip, then let them fear a little more. We have work to do. A deep, bone-rattling echoed through the chamber. Eos's head snapped up. The shadows along the walls twisted, forming shapes, figures Olympian sentinels, forged in the will of the gods, sent to ensure Themis never walked free again. The weaver of ruin stepped forward, his fingers tightening around the strands of fate he wielded. They come, he murmured. Just as we knew they would. Eos rose to her full height, power surging through her limbs, the dawn fire blazing in her hands. Then let them try to stop us. The shadows surged forward, and the battle for Themis's freedom truly began. The chamber trembled with divine fury. The moment the chains binding them shattered, the very air shifted, a pulse of energy rippling outward, carrying the weight of a decision that could not be undone. The echoes of broken fate surged through the world, reaching Olympus, reaching the gods, and with them came the inevitable. Retribution. Eos barely had a moment to register the change before the shadows within the chamber, within the chamber moved a rumbling force built from the walls, thick with wrath, and then the gate descended. The Olympian sentinels had arrived. Figures forged of light and shadow, their forms shifting between golden armor and spectral mist, dropped into the chamber like falling stars. They carried no weapons. The extensions of divine will, forged by Zeus himself to enact punishment on those who defied the gods. They did not speak. They did not hesitate. They struck. Eos barely had time to react before the first sentinel lunged, moving faster than thought. She raised her hands, summoning the power of dawn, and light erupted from her palms, clashing against the divine force of the entity. The impact sent shockwaves through the chamber, stone crumbling beneath their feet. "Seem, move," Eos shouted, her voice barely audible over the roar of divine energy colliding in the air. The Titaness of Justice, still weak but regaining her strength with every breath, staggered forward. She did not flee. The mist did not run from judgment. She was judgment. The Weaver of Ruin moved beside them, his fingers twisting through the stolen threads of fate, weaving them into a new pattern. Reality shifted. A sentinel lunged toward him, but instead of striking true, it empty void. Suddenly displaced by a twist in the unseen tapestry, the Weaver glanced at Eos. "We can't fight them forever. We must leave." Eos gritted her teeth, then opened a path. Themis raised a hand, her silver eyes gleaming as she gathered the remnants of her power. The chamber groaned under the weight of her will, and for the first time in an eternity, justice itself spoke. "Enough." The single word resonated like a bell tolling across the heavens. The sentinels faltered, their forms flickering, uncertain. The power of Themis was self-law itself, and even divine enforcers were not immune to it. Eos seized the moment. She surged forward, her golden light colliding with the nearest sentinel, forcing it back. It was not invincible. It could be stopped. The Weaver twisted fate once more, and suddenly the chamber fractured. For a brief, shattering moment, Eos felt nothingness. A tear in the world where fate was undone. Then the space around them reformed, and they were no longer in the prison chamber. They landed in the open sky. The air rushed past them as they plummeted through the heavens. The ruins of Themis's prison vanished behind them, lost in the swirling clouds. The ground below approached at a dizzying speed. Eos barely managed to get a word out before they were a shot. Wind wove itself around them, halting their descent just before they crashed. A presence stirred. Eos turned sharply, and her breath caught. A chariot hovered before them, its form both ethereal and real, wreathed in storm and golden light. At its helm, a figure stood tall, armored in celestial steel, his face marked with the arrogance of kings. Zeus had come. "Eos," he said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of the sky itself, "you have made a mistake." Eos straightened, fire burning in her chest. The only mistake was allowing Olympus to dictate the fates of others. Zeus studied her, his expression unreadable. Then his gaze flickered to Themis, who stood unshaken beside her. "Your judgment is no longer needed, Titaness," Zeus said. "The age of your law is over." Themis met his eyes, her voice cool and measured, "And yet you still fear it." A crack of thunder split the air. The sky darkened. Eos felt the shift before it came, the gathering of storm, the charge of lightning curling at Zeus's fingertips. This was no longer a battle of words. This was war. And Olympus would not yield. The air crackled with the charge of divine power. Zeus stood before them, his chariot hovering above the ruined sky, lightning curling around his fingers like leashed serpents. The heavens darkened at his presence, the sky bending to his wrath. Teos, Themis, and the Weaver of Ruin stood upon the threshold of rebellion. Olympus would not let them leave unchallenged. "You will surrender," Zeus commanded, his voice the thunder before the storm, "or you will be struck down." Eos lifted her chin, fire flaring in her palms. "I will not bow to you, Zeus. Not now, not ever." The storm roared. A bolt of lightning lashed down, searing through the sky. Eos barely had time to react before the Weaver twisted fate itself, shifting their reality an instant before the bolt could strike them. Instead, the ground beneath them exploded, sending shockwaves through the air. Zeus's gaze snapped toward the Weaver, his eyes narrowing. "You," he rumbled, his voice deep with the weight of recognition. "You should not exist." The Weaver of Ruin smirked, "And yet, here I am." The battle ignited. Zeus descended in a flash of golden fury, his spear of lightning forming in his grasp. The moment his feet touched the shattered remains of Themis's prison, the world itself has shifted. This is not a mere god. This was the king of Olympus. Eos met his charge, head on. Light clashed with light, dawn fire against the might of the skies. The impact sent shockwaves across the heavens, the very air warping under the force of their battle. Eos's flames seared the clouds, casting golden streaks against the storm, while Zeus's lightning ever howled, striking with the force of judgment itself. Themis did not wait. The moment she was freed, she had been regaining her strength, and now, as Olympus's king turned his fury upon them, justice rose to meet him. "You do not pass judgment, Zeus," Themis declared, her silver gaze blazing. "You are bound by it." She raised her hands, and the weight of divine law crashed into the battlefield. A wave of energy radiated outward, forcing Zeus to stumble. For the first time in eons, he was challenged by the very concept of order he had once used to his advantage. "You dare!" Zeus snarled, his form flickering between lightning and flesh. He lifted his spear again, aiming for Themis, but before he could strike, the Weaver of Ruin shifted fate once more. The attack never landed. Instead, Zeus's own lightning reversed, crackling back through the sky and striking the very heavens that had summoned it. The world heavens that had summoned it. The world wavered, bending against its own laws. Zeus's gaze darkened. This power, he murmured, his gaze locking onto the weaver. You are a threat to everything. The weaver laughed, twirling the golden threads of stolen fate between his fingers. Yes, I am. Eos did not waste the moment of hesitation. She launched herself at Zeus, her fists burning with the first light of the world. She struck with all the fury she had held back for eons, with all the fire of a goddess who had spent eternity watching fate be manipulated and twisted by those who deemed themselves superior. Zeus met her blow. Lightning surged through her veins, but she did not yield. She matched his strength, pushing back against the storm, defying the king himself. The battle raged across the heavens, but even as the gods clashed, the sky began to split. The other Olympians were coming. Eos knew they couldn't fight forever. Themis had only just regained her strength. The weaver, despite his power, was not ever invincible. If they stayed, they would be overwhelmed. We need to move, Themis called, her voice edged with urgency. Eos gritted her teeth, summoning all her strength. She met Zeus's gaze one last time, and in that moment she saw it, the flicker of eye uncertainties in his expression. He did not understand this battle. For the first time in his rule, it was no longer something he controlled. Eos wrenched herself free, gathering her power. She turned to the weaver. Take us out of here. Now. The weaver did not hesitate. Reality twisted. The world fractured. And then they were gone. They landed hard in a place untouched by Olympus. Eos staggered to her feet, her breath coming in heavy gasps. Around her, the air was ink with magic, an ancient power, neither divine nor mortal. Themis rose beside her, her silver eyes scanning their new surroundings. Where are we? The weaver of ruin exhaled, flicking the remnants of fate's energy from his hands. Somewhere the gods do not tread. Eos looked around, trying to regain her balance. The land around them was twilight incarnate, a place that existed outside of time. It was neither past nor present, neither Olympus nor earth. It was a sanctuary, but not for long. Zeus will come for us, Eos said, her voice steady despite the chaos still thrumming in her veins. They all will. Liz nodded. Then we prepare. This is not over. The weaver smirked. Oh, dawn. Bring her, it has barely begun. The skies above them whispered, the threads of fate still shifting, still unraveling. War was coming. And they were ready. The air in the sanctuary was thick with tension, a silence stretched taut between past and future. The battle with Zeus had left them shaken, but not broken. They had defied the king of Olympus and survived. Yet Eos knew survival was not victory. It was only the beginning of war. She turned to the Weaver of Ruin, who stood at the edge of the Twilight Realm, fingers threading through strands of stolen fate. His presence alone bent reality, shifting possibilities before they could fully form. "How long do we have?" she asked. The Weaver's golden eyes flickered with something unreadable. "Not long. The gods will recover, and when they do, they will not come one by one. They will come. They straightened, her silver gaze steady. "Then we must strike before they do." Eos clenched her fists, the fire of the dawn stirring in her veins. "Agreed. But we can't win this war alone. We need Helles." A flicker of something like amusement crossed the Weaver's face. "Olympus has ruled for ages because they have ensured there are none who would rise against them. Where, then, will you find those willing to defy the gods?" Eos met his gaze with unwavering certainty. In the places they thought they had conquered, among the beings they have wronged. These nodded. The Titans. Silence fell, heavy with meaning. The Titans, the gods' greatest enemies, the ones who had been imprisoned in the depths of Tartarus, never to rise again. The Weaver smirked. "Ah, now you speak of madness." Eos ignored him. "The gods believe their war with the Titans is over. They believe their rule is unshaken. But if we can break them as free, we can do the same for the others. We need their strength." Themis's voice was calm, but edged with warning. "Tartarus is not a place one simply enters, and those who remain within may not be willing to listen." Eos exhaled. "Then we make them listen." "We are not fighting to destroy Olympus. We are fighting to destroy Olympus, what has been broken, to give fate back to those it belongs to." The Weaver chuckled. "Idealistic Dawnbringer. But war is never so simple. Still, if you seek the Titans, then you will need to find a way past the gates of Tartarus. And that," he tilted his head, "will not be easy." Eos already knew this. The gates of Tartarus were not merely physical barriers. They were woven into the fabric of the underworld, guarded by forces older than Olympus itself. But she also knew where to start. She turned toward the horizon, where the sanctuary's twilight ended and reality began. "Then we go to the only being who has ever escaped Tartarus." Themis's expression darkened. "You mean?" Eos nodded. "Yes, we find Prometheus." Their journey led them across realms untouched by gods, through lands where forgotten myths still whispered in the wind. The Weaver bent fate where he could, twisting the threads to obscure their path from Olympus's gaze, but they all knew it would not last forever. The gods would hunt them. Prometheus had once been bound to a mountain, his punishment eternal, his liver devoured each day by an eagle, only to heal by nightfall. But that had been centuries ago. He had vanished. Some said he had faded into legend. Others believed he still walked among mortals, hidden in plain sight, watching his fate unraveled before him. They found him on the edges of the world. A lone figure stood at the mouth of a cave, watching the distant stars. He looked neither young nor old, neither divine nor mortal. His presence was steady, like the foundation of the earth itself. His gaze flickered as they approached, as if he had known they were coming before they had even set foot upon the land. Eos stopped a few paces away, her heart steady. Prometheus. He turned slowly, studying them. Dawn, bringer, justice, and something new. His gaze settled on the weaver of ruin, eyes sharp. Fate itself bends around you. You are not as you were meant to be. The weaver smirked. You say that like it's a bad thing. Prometheus did not return the amusement. It is neither good nor bad. It's simply eyes. And that is what Olympus fears the most. Eos took a step forward. We need your help. Prometheus exhaled, as if he had already known what she would say. You seek the Titans. You seek to break the chains of Tartarus. Eos nodded. The gods will come for us. If we do nothing, they will reclaim Themis, and all we have fought for will be lost. We must act first. Prometheus's eyes darkened. Do you know what you ask? The Titans are not as they once were. Centuries of imprisonment. It has changed them. Some may fight with you, but others. Eos straightened. Then we fight them too, but we will not let Olympus rule unchallenged any longer. Will you help us? Prometheus was silent for a long moment. Then, at last, he nodded. I will show you the way to Tartarus, but what happens after? That is no longer in my hands. Eos lifted her chin. Then we will decide fate for ourselves. The skies above them whispered, the winds shifting, as if the world itself was listening. The war had begun. The winds howled across the barren land, carrying the weight of a history long buried beneath the passage of time. Eos, Themis, and the Weaver of Ruin stood at the precipice of the next great battle. Not of weapons or war, but of weapons or war, but of Defied. Prometheus had agreed to guide them to Tartarus, but he had given no promises beyond that. He had seen the ruin of gods and the rise of new orders before. He knew well that what they sought was not just liberation, it was upheavalation. It was upheaval. The way to Tartarus is not one you can simply walk. Prometheus warned as they traveled through a land that had long been erased from mortal maps. It is a prison built upon a paradox. It exists where time does not move, where suffering is eternal. Eos clenched her fists. Then how did you escape? Prometheus's expression did not change. I did not escape alone. Someone else made that choice for me. And you must understand, when you break something free from Tartarus, you do not just release them. You do not just release that keeps the underworld intact. Themis, who had been silent, finally spoke. Then let it unravel. Olympus has held dominion for too long, shaping fate as they see fit. The Titans were not meant to rot forever in chains. Prometheus let out a slow breath. Then be prepared for what comes next. The gates of Tartarus were unlike anything Eos had ever seen. They were not mere doors, not an entrance carved from stone. They were a haft, a voice, a wound in existence itself, swirling with the darkness of forgotten souls. It pulsed like a dying star, ancient and aware. A voice whispered from the abyss, "You seek to enter that which cannot be left." Eos squared her shoulders. "We seek to restore what should never have been lost." The voice hummed, "Fools." The weaver of ruin stepped forward, golden threads of stolen fate dancing between his fingers. "Then open the way. We have no time for riddles." The darkness shuddered, and then the gate tore open. A force unlike anything they had ever felt dragged them inwards. The world turned inside out, time fractured, and in an instant they were no longer standing before the gate. They were inside Tartarus. The prison of the Titans was a place of endless twilight, a realm where suffering was not just inflicted. It was not just inflicted. It was a sky above, was a swirling mass of eye above, was a swirling mass of unformed fate, threads tangled beyond recognition. The ground beneath them pulsed like the heartbeat of a forgotten beast. Themis's expression was grim. "They are here, all of them." Eos turned, scanning the vast, broken land. In the distance, massive figures loomed, chained to mountains, bound in pits of divine fire. Their once mighty forms reduced to shadows of what they had been. One of them lifted his head. A voice rumbled through the air, deep and raw with ages of imprisonment. "Who dares set foot in Tartarus?" Eos stepped forward, her golden light flaring. "One who would see you?" "Oui." The ground trembled. Chains groaned against the weight of shifting titanic bodies. Some of the prisoners stirred, their eyes burning with fury. Others remained still, broken by centuries of torment. Prometheus spoke before any of them could react. "We come with a choice, to fight or to remain in your chains. The world above is not as it was. Olympus is not as strong as you think." A laugh, bitter and hollow, echoed through the prison. "And you think we would rise again for your cause? That we would trust gods? After what was done to us?" The voice came from Hyperion, once the Titan of the sun. His form was massive, his golden skin marred by divine brands that still burned after centuries. He was chained to a wall of obsidian, his once radiant eyes now dimmed. Eos met his gaze. "I do not ask for your trust. I ask for your vengeance." Hyperion stilled. Nees stepped forward, her presence like a weight upon the air. "You were meant to rule alongside justice. That justice was stolen from you. We are here to return it." Hyperion's chains rattled as he moved for the first time in eons. Around him, the other titans began to stir out. "If you wish to see Olympus fall," Eos said, "then fight with us." Silence stretched across Tartarus, a silence that was not refusal, but a consideration. And then one by one, the titans rose. The chains of Tartarus groaned like the bones of a dying world as the titans stirred from their imprisonment. Eos, standing amid the towering figures, felt the weight of ancient power rekindling. She had come to free them, but now she faced the question, would they fight for the same cause? Hyperion's golden eyes locked onto her. "You speak of vengeance, Dawn, bringer. But vengeance does not erase betrayal. Why should we trust you when Olympus and your kind cast us into this abyss?" Simi stepped forward, her presence an unshakable force. "Because I was bound as well. I have seen the gods twist justice to their will. But now, fate itself is unraveling, and if Olympus stands unopposed, they will rewrite history to erase all who defied them. That includes you." A murmur spread among the gathered titans. Some, like Tecous and Crius, remained silent, their expressions unreadable. Others, like Cleopatus, clenched their fists as if longing for battle. The weaver of ruin watched, golden strands of fate flickering between his fingers. You do not need trust. You need purpose. You can remain in your chains, fading into the depths of oblivion, or you can stand and take what was stolen from you. The gods fear change, but change is here, and it will not be stopped. A low growl came from Ekrios, his once mighty form scarred with the marks of Olympus's wrath. "And what do you offer, Shadow? Weaver, you are no titan. You are something else." The weaver's smirk was barely visible. I offer you. A silence settled. The weight of decision pressed upon them all. Hyperion finally exhaled. "You would break the gates of Tartarus itself to see Olympus fall?" Eos's flames burned brighter. "We already have." The titans stirred, their strength returning. Chains began to crack, ancient bindings shattering as divine power surged through them. The ground quaked as the prison of the gods began to unmake itself. Then a thunderous roar split the air. A presence more vast than the prison itself, deeper than the abyss of Tartarus, stirred. The very foundations of the underworld trembled. This turned, silver eyes widening. They have awakened him. A colossal conchato loomed beyond the darkness of Tartarus, something far older than the Olympians, something that had been sealed away long before Zeus claimed his throne. Pikronos, the fallen king of the Titans. A slow, rumbling voice echoed through the prison. "Who dares wake the father of time?" The Titans, once eager for battle, now hesitated. Eos knew this was the moment that would decide everything. The very foundations of Tartarus trembled as Kronos, the father of time, stirred from his slumber. The Titans, once eager for their freedom, now stood frozen beneath the shadow of their ancient king. His presence was vast, an echo of the past that had refused to be forgotten. Eos swallowed, feeling the weight of the moment. They had come to free the Titans, not awaken a god who had nearly destroyed the world, and yet here he was, rising, his form shifting between flesh and something more, something beyond time itself. His golden eyes burned through the darkness, fixing upon those who had disturbed his prison. Who among you calls upon the name of Kronos? Who among you seeks to rewrite fate? Themis stepped forward, her silver gaze unwavering. We do not seek to rewrite fate. We seek to restore what was stolen. Kronos laughed, a sound like grinding stone and unraveling stars. Stolen. Tell me, daughter of justice, were you not part of Olympus when they cast me into this abyss? Were you not among those who stood by while my children betrayed me? Themis did not flinch. I was blind then, no longer. Eos felt the tension coil tighter, the Titans behind them watching, waiting. Hyperion, who had seemed so sure of his decision moments ago, now looked uncertain, as did many of the others. They had fought against Kronos once before. Would they follow him now? The weaver of ruin stepped forward, golden threads dancing between his fingers. You were the first to be cast aside, Kronos, the first to be chained so Olympus could rise, and now you stand at the edge of a new age, one where fate can be unmade. Kronos turned to the weaver, his massive form shifting, his presence bending the air around him. You are not of my bloodline, and yet I see the threads of the cosmos in your grasp. Tell me, what is it you seek? The weaver's smirk was barely visible. Balance. Or destruction. It depends on who holds the power when the dust settles. Kronos studied him for a long moment, then turned back to the gathered Titans. You who have suffered, you who have been bound, what will you do? Will you kneel before the children who stole your thrones, or will you take back what is yours? A murmur spread through the gathered Titans, uncertainty giving way to something deeper, anger, hunger. Eos knew they were on the verge of something irreversible. If Kronos took command of this war, it would not be a fight for balance. It would be annihilation. She stepped forward, summoning the full power of the dawn, her golden light pushing back against the darkness. If you rise, Kronos, what will you do? Will you wage war against Olympus to reclaim a throne long lost, or will you burn the world with your fury? Kronos' gaze shifted, amused. And what would you have me do, Dawn? Bringer? Would you chain me once more? Would you place your trust in the gods who forged this prison? Eos did not waver. I place my trust in those who fight for more than vengeance. Olympus must fall, but the world must survive. If you destroy everything, you will have won nothing. The air in Tartarus stilled. The Titans waited. And then Kronos smiled. Then let us see what kind of war you are willing to fight. The earth cracked. The chains that had bound Cronus for eons snapping like thread, the prison of Tartarus began to collapse, and the war for Olympus had begun. The collapse of Tartarus sent shockwaves through the underworld, splitting the ground with fractures of molten fire. Eos barely had time to react before the prison's ancient walls, breaking apart as the Titans rose from their shackles, Above them, the sky of the underworld split open, a gaping void forming as Kronos stretched his arms wide. His form expanded, his power unfurling like the ticking of an unseen clock that had once been stilled. The Titans, once prisoners, were now an army. The gods will feel our return. Hyperion rumbled, his golden form crackling with renewed strength. They will know what it is to fall. Eos exchanged a glance with Themis, tension hanging between them. This war had begun in the name of justice, but Kronos did not seek justice. He sought ruin. The Weaver of Ruin observed the unfolding chaos with an unreadable expression, golden threads of fate still flickering at his fingertips. And now comes the true test, Dawn. Bringer, will you let this unfold, or will you stand in the way of fate itself? Eos turned sharply. I do not fight for Olympus, but I will not let you burn the world for vengeance. Kronos laughed, his voice shaking reality itself. Then try and stop me. The Titans surged forwards, the boundaries between realms breaking apart as Tartarus's gates were left behind. The path to Olympus was open. Eos felt the pull of destiny tightening around her like unseen chains. She had freed the Titans to break the cycle of Gata gods controlling Theta gods. Controlling Theta, but had she instead set something even worse into motion? Themis placed a hand on her shoulder. We still have a choice. Eos. If we strike first, we can control the battle. We can make sure this war does not become a massacre. Eos exhaled, her golden fire flickering in her palms. Then we move now. Before Kronos reaches Olympus. The Weaver smirked, and so fate bends once more. With a final look at the devastation behind them, Eos, Themis, and the Weaver of Ruin vanished, moving faster than thought, heading for the summit of the world before the storm of war reached its peak. As the Titans ascended toward Olympus with Kronos at their helm, the gods above must have felt it. The end of an age was coming, and Eos would make sure it would not end in oblivion. The skies above Olympus tore apart, riven by the clash of Titans and gods. The mountain trembled under the weight of war, its peak struck by lightning, its foundations cracked by divine fury. The final battle had begun. Eos landed upon the summit, her golden fire blazing in the chaos. Around her, the forces of fate and vengeance collided, shaking the heavens. Zeus stood upon his throne, his form wreathed in storm, while Kronos towered before him, his shadow stretching across the battlefield like the end of time itself. You dare rise against me again, Father? Zeus roared, his spear of lightning crackling with power. Your era has passed. Your war is over. Kronos' laughter shook the stars. Then tell me, King of Olympus, why does fate tremble in my way? The battle erupted. Titans and gods clashed, their blows tearing the sky, their power reshaping the mountain itself. Themis moved like a blade through the chaos, wielding justice as a force of law against both high tyranny and destruction. But Eos did not fight for Olympus, and she did not fight for Kronos. She fought for balance. She surged forward, her fire cutting through the battlefield, seeking the weaver of ruin. He stood at the edge of destiny itself, golden threads unraveling in his hands. End it, she commanded, her voice steady. The weaver smiled, but his gaze was somber. Are you certain, Dawnbringer? When this thread is cut, the cycle of fate will break. The gods, the titans, none of it will remain as it was. Eos's heart thundered. Then let it be broken. Let us forge something new. The weaver nodded. With a single motion, he has severed the thread. A wave of energy erupted across the battlefield, freezing time itself. The combatants stilled, the power suspended in the unraveling weave of fate. The skies stilled, the mountain is stilled, and for a single breath, the world eyed for a single breath, the world eyed stood on the precipice. Then the storm collapsed. Zeus fell, his power stripped, his form fading as the divine order unraveled. Kronos shudders, his body dissipating like dust caught in the wind. The titans, the gods, all those bound to fate and remade in an instant. And when the light cleared, a new dawn had risen. Eos stood at the summit of a mountain reborn, the first light of an age free from the chains of destiny. Around her, the battlefield was at ease, the cycle of war broken. Themis emerged beside her, her silver eyes calm. The weaver of ruin exhaled, his hands now empty. The world is yours to shape. Eos turned toward the horizon, where the first true sunrise of the new fate painted the sky. No longer bound by prophecy, no longer dictated by the will of gods. She had won, and now the world was free. Thank you for being with me tonight, dear dreamers. I'm Abigail, and it has been a magical journey walking through the echoes of time with you. As the final whispers of this tale fade into the night, may the story of Eos, the goddess who dared to defy fate, linger softly in your dreams. Let the mysteries of mythology wrap around you like a gentle embrace, guiding you into a deep and restful sleep. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the peace of the night carry you away. Until next time, may your dreams be filled with wonder.